And we're live. Welcome to Earful of Dirt Lineouts. I'm here with Dan Lyle, the captain, and we're going to be talking about AEG Rugby's promotion jointly with USA Rugby of an international weekend. You guys have brought in a preseason Super Rugby fixture of the Blue Bulls and Stormers. That is pretty interesting, especially considering our former head coach of 6 months ago is leading the Bulls after a pretty successful shakeup and Curry Cup campaign.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. We met with SANZAR. So for everyone listening out there, that's an acronym for South Africa, New Zealand, Argentina, Australia, or Australia, Argentina. Obviously, Japan is included in that when it comes to Super Rugby, but with their franchise. But we met with them in London, presented to their board with their CEOs and their chairman about a way of getting Super Rugby and the test matches, rugby championship stuff into the United States. Certainly New Zealand has played here twice very successfully at Soldier Field that we all know, but really kind of trying to create something on a regular basis. And I think that's what that just earmarks what AEG believes in, is that we think that we should find a way to create a calendar from January to December of events that we and others are managing and owning. That can be collaborative on. So we've dipped our toe into the SANZAR waters, and the Australians and New Zealanders have an event. They actually have an event that we are a co-promoter of in Australia.
Okay.
We manage the Suncorp Stadium, which a lot of people might know. That's where in Brisbane, where Queensland plays and Australia plays a lot. So it's called the Tens.
Oh, yeah, Brisbane Tens.
Yeah, the Australian and New Zealand sides are playing in that. So this first year conversation, the South African teams were available, and the first two that put their hands up were the Bulls and Stormers. So it was a little bit of a kind of a catch-all meets get the first year accomplished. And like a lot of first year events, you've got to do it, and then you can wrap your head around the best way of doing it and timings and lots of other things.
I mean, you guys are talking about tens. I am a big advocate of tens. I would love to see like USA Rugby do some type of melding and, actually field a tens national team for, a sort of once a year event like doing the Brisbane Tens, or, field a select side of some kind to go to the Hong Kong Tens, which is in advance of course, Hong Kong Sevens.
Yeah. I think we played a few guys in either it's really the post end of your career or the really rookie end of your career for the Hong Kong ones. But I think you're right. I played tens for years ago. The Malaysian tens were a big one when I was still youthful enough to run around, and that was a fantastic thing, because you still could have all the different positions on the field. But at the same time, it opened it up and gave a little more space. So yeah, I love tens as well. But yeah, so it's a complementary. We have operations. AEG does, pretty much on every continent through our sports, our music, or our facilities, and that's one of them.
So, as part of, this is where I take this podcast and some of the other guys on to interesting ends, because normally, of course, as you know, we cover Major League Rugby. But you and Paul Morgan and Premiership Rugby granted us some great access. You were the first. You guys were episode 1 of Earful of Dirt Lineouts, and then Victor and Dan went to your first of your American series with the Premiership. So you joined AEG to develop a rugby strategy and promotion strategy. So you presented to SANZAR. How does this compare to where you're going with the American series of the Premiership?
Well, the evolution of the Premiership will be we'll issue an RFP out on the East Coast in the next 6 to 8 weeks, so that we, a year out, in April of 2019, will be the next premiership match, early season. So we will. So late in their season, but more we believe in the spring opportunity. The game was, earmarked in the fall. I think it's really challenging for a sport like ours to go up against a lot of the fall dominant, obviously football and other things. So we've made it known, and obviously we couldn't do anything this year because it's the one calendar year. 17-18 is the season. So the 18-19 season, we've earmarked April, and we'll go out with an RFP that will integrate with the rugby community, the sports community, the business community, and the grassroots communities in 3 or 4 of the cities to make that game really work. But it's the Premiership is a fantastic organization. They have a capacity to reach across the U.S. In different ways through their development opportunities. So we will be helping them constitute a development strategy. But we're also working hard on a content strategy, something that where their content can be seen and developed, not just in the weekends of their games, but all of the content that they develop and the teams develop through a platform that we can get out there. And that's something that we hope that we can do with the different people that we do partner with. So the Premiership that relationship is evolving. We did the scholarships, which will happen second weekend in March. Those 35 folks are over in the UK, fulfilling hopefully their dreams and coming back with a lot of really cool experiences. But we'll roll that into a more robust development strategy of coaches, coaching, and referees and other things, which we hope to announce somewhere in that a year out from that game, which is in April of this coming year. So then that RFP will be a 2 or 3 year RFP, so that we'll know when the game is, how we're going to do the strategies, and really can build it from there. And I think that again is is another way of talking about the calendar, right? That you have regular fixtures within the calendar year, but also consistent fixtures that people can plan multiple years out for.
Well, that's what I mean for me with what you guys are doing. And we actually sat next to each other at Lost Afternoon, telling college war stories, from 20 years apart. But for me, everything about rugby in this country, because it's relatively small, although you have a lot of people that have played or are aware, it's all about predictable events. And people said, why are you doing it in Philadelphia? Why are you doing it in Talent? I thought the location was fine for me. And I voiced this, in our chat with Paul, that I said, if you get to a certain point, this is a success. And, brand recognition of Saracens and Newcastle isn't, like some of our NFL teams are in the UK when they do the American series in the UK for the NFL when it comes to promotion. But you outdrew Celtic League matches, so Guinness Pro 14, and you also outdrew home matches in the Aviva Premiership. So for me, against the
I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to interrupt there. Look, lots of circumstances led to the game in that month, and that kind of early in our career. I was personally disappointed in different ways about certain aspects of the event, but also really buoyed by the opportunities that we have in front of us. And we certainly, I think that it's one of the signatures of AAG are going to have a strong development out of the back of what we did in the first year. So, it's not about, well, it certainly is about learning the lessons, but it certainly is about more about putting building blocks in place and making it part of, and putting it in times where the American rugby community can be engaged. And I think that if that's the case, that we can engage people, then I think that we have a really strong, robust niche group of people that will spread the tentacles on behalf of these events. And certainly, I personally called and congratulated, Jeremy Turner and his team yesterday on the back of the MLR game in Houston. I certainly think, I was part of that first game in 2001 against South Africa, and there's certainly been a lot of, if you're, you can find the right markets and create some consistency, then people will respond. So we have enough touch points and we have enough proof points. Now you have to execute and put that calendar together.
Awesome. Yeah, not to really make this about the Premiership because it's not. It's about Super Rugby. But for me, I thought it was a success based on all the factors that go into entering the American market in September.
Yeah.
So now we've got Super Rugby in what I call the gap. I call the month of February, when it comes to the American broadcast and sporting calendar in general, the gap, because we hit the end of the NFL, college football's over. So February's before March Madness, it's before spring training, it's before all that stuff, and you guys are hitting the gap. And granted, it's Super Bowl weekend, but there's really not much going on Saturday when it comes to the broadcast calendar and event calendar of American sports.
Yeah, certainly big factors, right? When sports can be played in America and building that calendar, the January, February, and then certain summer months are more robust, are looking for product than others. So certainly you got to take advantage of those if you can. A Super Rugby match means that we're not, offsetting the cost of a home field match, in a regular season and things, but, the aspirations is to play, an annual game in February, and doing it in conjunction with the American Rugby Championship to help that build value, seemed to all of us, makes a lot of logical sense, So I think that, we're in the middle of it, and the ticket sales are pretty good. They're most of the Southern California rugby community. While it's in Stubhub, which is our facility, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're doing LA is obviously we own that building outright. But also, the LA Olympics 2028 are there, and that the Stubhub is the home of the Rugby Olympic men's and women's Rugby Olympics. So it gives us kind of a window of time, even though it's a 10-year thing. But I think that we have to think like that. I think we have to think 10 years in advance and then get those 3 to 5 year bite-sizable chunks of consistent content down. So Super Rugby offers us that within February, as you rightly point out. And so we jumped on that, and hopefully we do it on an annual basis and start to build some value. And it's not LA, probably Houston, Florida are the kind of the 3 most dominant places for Super Rugby, but moving down the lines, the test matches for those teams, and when do they play? And we've had a really successful first weekend in November, Rugby weekend, but is there room for 1 or 2 of those matches in conjunction with the U.S. At different times of the year as well? That's the engagement that you need to have. But you need to these calendars are set 3, 4, 5 years in advance. They have to get it locked in and have that conversations, immediately. So that's what we're trying to do.
So right now we've got a preseason match. 2 weeks later, there's another, ARC match, and the calendar for the ARC sort of fluctuates. But 2 weeks later is the beginning of Super Rugby. In the future, could you, because you're coupling this promotion right now as a doubleheader, could we make a doubleheader at an AEG controlled facility again, but with a kickoff match instead?
Yeah, look, we don't want to say no. Obviously, the costs go up if you do a regular season match because you're having offside the home, and those fans back in that community, they have less matches, versus the Premiership. So you'd have to kind of balance all that kind of stuff out. 2 Super Rugby preseason matches, 1 in LA, 1 in Houston. Is a really cool novel concept. And other cities. But I think that goes to the market strategy, right? Is what those 8 to 12 markets in the U.S. that should have consistent content. That's something that people have to work together on. So we and it's never about the AEG controlled facility. Obviously we make you as you say, control things if it's in your facility. But we have such a robust partnership with the entire MLS family, with so many of the NFL, so many different venues that we can. That we're not pigeonholed into just a just our buildings or ones that we are controlling. It's always nice to do that because you can do things easier, but it's we're thinking broader and longer term.
Well, I think that's why you also said you're submitting out for an RFP for, the other promotion that you're doing. So it's just about, the controlling the event space with a contract.
Yeah. But I think we're doing a multi-school promotions, through in Los Angeles, and we believe in the development strategy and working tightly with SoCal Youth Rugby, SoCal Rugby, as well as the college conferences, and really trying to give people an idea that that the community group that we built there, we put a plan together, that community leaders group, that has community liaisons from every constituency below that, turns into a legacy group, a development group. Yeah. That ultimately across the constituencies, because not everybody meets each other very often, but across the college, high school, club, and youth space, that they're able to talk about future events. They're able to talk about how they find funds for some of the goals that they have. And I think those are things that every market should aspire to, that has an event of this type of a caliber or higher. Yeah.
So going forward with Sanzar, how did we settle on 2 South African teams, or was that a them thing? And it's also kind of interesting based on circumstances with who the teams are. Although I will say Stormers and Bulls are when I look at South African franchises, they have Stormers, Bulls, and Lions have the most notoriety stateside and globally.
Yeah, year one, as I said, the South African and the Australian, New Zealand franchises were already contracted.
Okay.
And so we had an option to say, okay, do we do it or not do it? And if we do it, then we have to do the two South African teams. These 2 teams, along with with the Lions, also have the majority of the Springboks. There's a pretty strong South African population in Southern California. Yeah. They are in Houston, are the 2 biggest ones. So we agreed that this would be our jumping off point, and go from there. So we're excited about that. We have the opportunity to work with these 2 teams and the South African Rugby Union, and that the future and a full year of planning will give us the opportunity to say, well, what's exactly the best way of doing these things, and going forward. So, but like a lot of things, you have to do things the first time. You can't, and before you find all the different reasons to add and subtract and change and build.
So, I mean, this fixture is approaching rapidly.
Yep.
Is Super Rugby or the Bulls and Stormers individually, are they planning on doing a lot of just outreach? I would say the easy stuff, which is just open practices and, bringing youth rugby coaches, just not to do coaching clinics, but say, hey, just watch.
Yeah, that's the strong indication from both teams, and we should be getting their calendars, training schedules here pretty soon. But yeah, that's what we've communicated to the community, that those guys will be, they're in preseason, so it's come and learn and be part of it. And the Stormers and Bulls coaching staff and management staffs are looking at our multiple sports that we own, in franchises, to kind of get some cross fertilization of what football and hockey and soccer and basketball do and things like that. So hopefully it'll be beneficial on both sides. But yeah, I don't think you cannot not do that, right? I think that's a fundamental to what you do, and you have to spend time and energy and trying to get the Argentinians into the community through USA Rugby. The U.S. team is training most in San Diego and don't come up until Friday, but hopefully they're doing some stuff down there in San Diego as part of it. Look, our men's and women's teams are our biggest asset from a promotional perspective in a lot of ways. So getting them in the community and these professionals in the community is key.
Going forward, so are the Argentinians also down in San Diego, or are they coming up and are they gonna train at Stubhub? Because you guys have
No, I don't think so. I think
it's a massive facility.
Yeah, I think they're coming up kind of midweek from Argentina.
Okay.
And then having a couple of days on the ground, and then they'll have spent a lot of time together already. So
Yeah.
they're really not looking for, unlike the Bulls and Stormers who are in a full preseason, gym and they're doing all that stuff. They're not peaking for this game, but we know that the best of the best will be playing, so it'll be a great curtain raiser.
Back to Stormers and Bulls. Everything I know about like South African coaches, South African rugby seems to be very systems based, and Americans at this juncture really love systems, especially in football and basketball, and when it comes to coaching offenses. I think every time you talk, John Mitchell talks, it's always an interesting listen because I learn something new every time. And he talks about establishing a sustainable system wherever he goes. So I think, just being able to observe what he does, let alone, even if you don't get to talk to him, says a lot. I don't really know the Stormers coaching staff that well, but I think that will be a big deal for me. I won't be able to go watch it because work is work.
Yeah. Look, I think that if you're not systems based in any sport, then you're not able to compartmentalize, all the different things that go into your job, on and off the field as coaches, and I've always been a big advocate of the two things that American rugby needs to focus on the most is coach development and program building, right? So how do you build a sustainable program, at any level, and then how do we educate our coaches not just with the X's and O's, but also but the full tier of structure that goes into being a well encompassed coach. So these the South African teams have got they're historic. They've got so much structure for a long time, but you take what you have, and you mold it and build systems around that team. I think it's pro sports and college sports and things like that. You've got windows of time with people. You only get the Brady's for so often, right? For so many years.
Oh my gosh, that guy. Or Dan Lyles. I mean, you played for like at a high level for 12 years. You probably had 4 more years in you.
Yeah, we'll see. But no, I think that because these teams will be open and coaches observing and hopefully answering questions afterwards and things like that. We'll hopefully it'll be a really good environment for everybody, and these little glimpses of how teams start their practices, from us, coming together as a team to individual drills, with the ball, without the ball, how they break into segments, both from a forwards and backs to a different skill sets, into individual skills platforms during and after. I think that all of those things are wonderful observations, and I think that every coach in America, because we have an understanding of that stuff through most of our other sports, but sometimes we don't apply it to rugby, because we generally learned it as a player or a coach in just a ad hoc. Everyone goes out, play a little touch, kick the ball around, and then maybe go into some set piece stuff and then start scrimmaging, and I think that these guys will show us that what we look at in our normal sports environments applies to rugby as well. And they're coming over and learning, as I said, from our sports as much as anything else. And, I remember my old coach who coached England, Clive Woodward, who was at Bath, just talking about the systematic approach, of American sports and being able to compartmentalize that, throughout England's training. That's something that we can all learn, that, hey, we've got that actually inside of us, as Americans. And hey, these guys are applying it, as some of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, I was showing a guy, this is sort of a sidebar conversation. I was showing a guy yesterday who's helped me work on a coaching system series. I was showing him links of just different football offensive systems that you can buy. Mm-hmm. And I think we sort of shut down in the American rugby space, all of the lessons learned from, you know, the sports that we played as children, if we didn't play rugby. And, you know, because I always ask about literature when it comes to coaching rugby, and I'm always told there's not much. I mean, and so I was showing this guy, his name's Gordon Hanlon, and I was like, here's one system. This guy was the offensive coordinator at UCLA. And he's like, really? You buy this? What is all this stuff? Once a game played, it's kind of moot, and it's really not. I mean, playbooks, videos, like it's a whole industry within itself. And right now, this week is the American Football Coaches Association conference and trade show where, you know, it's all about coach development and guys, you know, teaching spread offenses and selling their systems on the trade show floor. And I think that's where we need to go. But, you know, that's more about systems, but moving back to AEG rugby. So anyone who follows you on social media has known that you have taken many trips to LA in the last like 2 months. What has AEG's promotion for this game been like?
So we have a pretty comprehensive the local market, you know, radio and grassroots stuff is really the last 4 weeks. So it just started now. We have some targeted assets that we have, signage, you know, billboards and things like that we have that are ours. I think, you know, this type of a match. So we have a pretty significant budget with USA Rugby. You have your traditional, now traditional, you know, social media, you know, buy campaign. It's targeting different people, and your whole HTML partner-driven campaign, so different people in markets. And what AEG's we're able to bring to the conversation is that you know, getting the DHLs and the Amexes and the Coca-Colas of the world, sending out offers and newsletters, and, you know, kind of reaching into our broader database. It doesn't always respond in year one to, you know, every email you send out, getting somebody to come to the stadium, but you're seeding the market for long term, and also engaged in the youth commit the schools campaign. So you've got 3 or 4 pieces of your campaign, you know, that you're actively engaging in, and again, also it's about building a division within AEG, you know, and pulling from different resources that we have, and teaching them about the sport. So and, you know, why is it important for, you know, different groups to do different things, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's you know, I'm building our own internal capacity within rugby. We're building the LA rugby community's capacity, you know, and teaching them and telling them about long-term structure, and then going down some of the second degree and farther reaches, you know. So you've got the expat community, which is somewhere between first and second degree and broader than that, and they're all attacked in different ways. All right, so you meet with the consulates and their lists. You meet with, you know, you've got the whole Polynesian community is intertwined in different ways through after school programs, church programs, different things. You've got obviously the Argentina. It's the second biggest population in the U.S. After Miami. You know, so they have actually a broadcast network in the U.S. You know,
hey,
they do.
I didn't know that. I will when I go, because my parents live in SoCal. I will go in search of Argentinian food now that I know that. You know,
they have about 10 or 11 or more specific Argentina restaurants just in, you know, LA. So yeah, I mean, it's a so, you know, then you get into the all those other you know, you could spread yourself too thin, you know. And then we're going to do some promotions around some Kings games, you know, in LA Live, and do some grassroots promotions of, you know, some of those traditional campaigns of flyers and different things at the different establishments that people would frequent, you know. So you just try to divide, you know, put a budget against each one of those, and get after it. And
for me, I mean, I understand social media like as an avenue for growth and for marketing, but I look at how we've marketed games in this country in the last decade, and I look and I say, you know what? We need to delve into the traditional marketing sphere, which is billboards and radio spots, and you just talked about radio spots happening in the 4 weeks leading up to that, which I'm so glad to hear because I've gone to a few matches now, and I do the math and I'm wondering what's going on, but nice to see, professional marketing going into this. And,
we've got, if you know the SoCal market, we've got a K-Rock campaign through a few of their channels, which is a kind of, the entertainment side.
K-Rock, man. That's great stuff.
Then an ESPN, radio campaign. And then, comes with that with some interviews and some giveaways and things like that. So, you try to, get as much value as you can. But yeah, look, it's not a 1-for-1. It's a build conversation, right? If you've got the 3 initial building blocks, which we didn't have with the Premiership, but we kind of knew that going in, tried to overcome them, but we're making up for that in the next one we're doing. It's got to be a bit of a destination, right? People, I want to come and I want to see these matches. I've got to have, the rugby community has got to say, hey, we don't have to play all of our matches this weekend. We can schedule earlier or later and most of them have done that in SoCal.
Yeah.
Recon that weekend.
SoCal Rugby Football Union and Arizona Rugby for everyone, so both youth and senior, that is a bye weekend, which I am so glad because I'm still trying to actively play. And I bought tickets, and it was a question of, within a geography sphere, is there going to be opportunity cost? Do I go to this game that I really want to go to, or do I go play club rugby? And wisely so. Within the geography, the head honchos were like, well, we need a bye week here, so let's do it. And this releases everyone to, if they want, they can go to that game.
Yeah, we still have some constituencies in the college ranks and others that, so you're doing a campaign to convince people to when they should, that this is valuable and why their kids should come and things like that. And then, reaching into the broader schools community and the schools program that we have. We're kind of doing 28 schools after the 28 Olympics. So, working with Alex Williams of SoCal Youth Rugby and our foundation to really get into those schools and then helping groups like Play Rugby and Intercity Rugby with Stu Crone and those groups. That those kids don't generally have the resources nor their parents or their siblings to come to those games. So knowing that we've got that we're building value to make sure that you're giving, to the right people, keeping the value of what you're doing for those that can buy, and building from there, and then applying, group sales and tactical phone calls and things like that you would do, and all that stuff is in play. And we've got people responding, and it's a good environment. But so those 3 ingredients of destination, the rugby community, and the last one being that it's driven by organically, because people then share it and share it out, and that part of those first 2, a lot of that has to come down to sponsors and people that want to that see value in the sport. And I think that's what we have. That's the third leg of it that we have to build over time. We have to build those ones that want to be part of this, and then they engage their employees, they engage their broader community. It becomes easier and easier for people to come to matches. You get corporate hospitality filled up and all those different things. So there's simple ingredients, and then there's a whole tactical plan. I kind of think of that. I coached basketball last night, Aaron, and my kids, and they call it the triple threat, right? You get the ball in your hands, and the triple threat is you pass, you dribble, you shoot, right? And you're able to do that and so forth. And so the fundamentals of the game are passing, dribbling, and shooting, right? And how do you do each one of those? The fundamental of events, are kind of those 3 things for rugby, and then once you understand that those are the fundamentals, and if you can get good at those things, then you're able to kind of tactically advance or spread your game out and build broader and broader systems,
What are you, James Naismith over there?
Yeah. He's our rugby man, right?
Going from rugby and
multi-sport. It's my favorite sport, funnily enough. I love rugby, but it was just because I played it. I played soccer and basketball till I was 18, right? So it was mine. And I still play a pickup basketball game.
Well, basketball is, I would say, because it's so fluid, pickup basketball is the most fun sport I will probably ever play, because you play, well, I mean, depending on your rules, you always play to like 21 and you just go and then you're gassed. Because sometimes you go to the gym and you play, you're the team that always wins and you're on the court for like 3 hours. So, you know.
I don't know that feeling.
Oh, you don't? I've only done it once and it was horrible, like afterwards. So,
yeah.
But
I have a 3-game limit nowadays. So if I get past 3 games, then my recovery time is not what it used to be. So,
well, it's great to see, you know, this full integration strategy on your guys' part. I want Los Angeles Stubhub Center, that facility. I think you guys, if this is the predictable event, you know, if we could do an ARC always there. I know like the last 2 years they did Round Rock at Del Diamond, which was great. You know, again, it's all about predictable events on the rugby calendar so that we can, you know, build value and commercialize the properties. But StubHub has the ability to do like everything, because that facility is just massive. You can, you know, have this, you know, massive festival of rugby going. Like if there, as things progress, you know, a festival of a week of different development and just everything. So I'm really happy to see StubHub being used again in the rugby space. So let's move forward to, I guess, the questions that we talked about previously before we went online. I got 2 more through the chat, so I think we'll hit those first. You sort of mentioned working with colleges, but the question from Next Level Rugby, the guy behind Next Level Rugby is Ryan Ginty. He says, will AEG ever get involved with college rugby in the U.S.? And I'm guessing this is more as like an event promotion space.
Yeah, I mean, we love the space. We love college. You know, there's a lot of factors will go into that. We certainly think that the college window is significant. It's part of that calendar period. You know, so whether we do it or it happens under USA Rugby or others, we're supportive of it completely and collaborative in that. So I think, look, without trying to dodge the question, you know, we're monitoring that space. We like that space significantly, and you know, there's a lot of people that have done some good things in those spaces, and you know, we'll continue to monitor it in 2018, and you know, and be at the table with people as it goes forward.
Next question, which is from my producer Corey, and I think we're sort of seeing the question as a yes, because more promoters are entering the space. Has rugby grown to the point where promoters in the U.S. can make money putting on matches?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, people make money. So, and you know, there's always an investment threshold for sport. Most sports, you know, have some sort of a window of investment to when they get into the black. So it really depends on what the event is and what they're trying to do. But yeah, I mean, it's a it's a business that either grows in practical cash flow for that year, or it grows into equity like anything else. But I think it has to be done. Anybody that enters the market, and we should have a strong entrepreneurial marketplace in America, because that's how our sports community works and how our sports have been developed, that they enter the space, you know, and it's not about, you know, we've entered the space and what we want is the entire pie to increase, you know, so it's not just about taking over somebody else's pie or grabbing it, that the entire pie has to increase. And so if you enter the space, that the collaborative strategy of entering that space and not, you know, cannibalizing somebody else's event, or not, you know, doing something counterintuitive is the best way of doing that. So yes, it can be done, but B, it has to be collaborative.
Let's see where. So taking AEG's strengths as an event and venue company, and then your involvement and commitment to new venues. when it comes to facilities construction projects, do you foresee AEG continuing to build rugby compatible facilities?
Well, I think that's two different things. We are, we're a global company, and we have through building this division for AEG Rugby, we're working with multiple different partners in different parts of the world. So building rugby internationally is one thing. So I would say that yes, there's that dialogue. And then on the flip side of it, in the U.S., having at one point owned 6.5 of the 10 MLS franchises and being a significant player within the sport now, and having built several of the current MLS facilities, most of them have the capacity for rugby, baseball, and that soccer and rugby are very similar. I think that college and pro football spaces generally don't, at least from a perspective of fully vetted World Rugby, with the full perimeters and everything like that. So, but I think that that the more and more the people are able to understand, that rugby is a commercial sport, and does have some capacity. That the venues that are built or retrograded, will add rugby to their pieces. So I certainly think as a major player in the sports facilities space at AEG, we're advocating for that, and I guess that's probably as much as I can say about that. There's nothing that we're not doing to advocate for it, as you can
Got it. It seems when it comes to new facility construction, everyone is looking to be FIFA compliant, and with that, you still have more real estate that you need to add so that you're FIFA compliant, which allows each space to, be World Rugby compliant. Yes, a rugby pitch is a larger field, but so Levi's was built to be FIFA compliant. Well, with that, it's large enough to have the space, more so than some of the premiership grounds, to have a World Rugby compliant pitch for an international match. So I think we're starting to see those guys look at, how big of the pitch can we build and still have good viewing so that we can make money on everything.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that there's so many in the UK and France and other places, so many grounds that are co-used or have things that if you've got a stadium, it's much harder to monetize outside of your anchor tenants, your team, right? Because you've got the weather to contend with. You've got in soccer and rugby a year round stuff. So how do you kind of do things? And I think the MLS stadiums are finding the same things out, right? So I think that and the NFL stadiums, you have there's less and less stadium tours for music, right? The arena tours are the big things, and the festivals, is where there's so many things go on. So I think monetizing stadiums, with other sporting events and a couple of music events, is something that everybody's looking at, and certainly rugby is is one, and I think you're just seeing some evolution there.
I think this is my final question that I have on the docket, and then we'll wrap up. And I believe I'll see you in a couple weeks if you're at the event. So, have you guys at AEG Rugby, because you're talking about building the capacity at this point, because AEG Rugby as a division has existed, I think, 2 years. Is that about right?
We started in November, December of 2016, so it's a year and
change.
Yeah, so a little over a year. So we just had our first birthday.
Not too shabby so far.
I don't know if that's a question, but look, I'm driven on behalf of American Rugby, and so it's been wonderful to bring the men and women of AEG into the rugby space, and arguably the largest sports entertainment company into the space. We're learning as much as anything else, and as we've done with multiple sports, but we have the capacity to really be contributory towards, and helping build that ecosystem, for within American rugby, and also doing some things internationally. So it's exciting, to say the least. Super Rugby for the first time in America, that's exciting as well. Getting to play with the U.S. team and Argentinian team is exciting. Los Angeles is great. So we're, you have to, pin your shoulders back sometimes and just say, hey, we're moving forward, and we're trying to do the best we can.
Well, as you know me, I'm a bit verbose because I try to get verbose and detailed responses. So that really wasn't my question. That was more of the ground laying for this next question was, has AEG considered, any outbound rugby promotions? So not really the Eagles, because you don't really have the chance to control them, but say the USA Islanders were just founded this last year, and they played their first match against Saracens in Bermuda for Beyond Rugby. Or, we're seeing MLR take shape, taking either of these to organizations on an exhibition overseas at, Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane as part of a multi-header event.
Yeah, look, I think that I wrote a paper years ago, that talked about kind of a barnstorming team, made up of our domestic talent and crossovers and things like that. I believe in some level of dialogue there. I believe that the North American Barbarians is a great concept. I believe that for men and women,
Me too.
I believe that WPL teams and MLR teams, playing both domestically and internationally against the champions or others in other windows within the American calendar. I think all of those are strong considerations as you build the entire calendar. So yeah, I think that those things are valuable. And I think the British Lions are thinking about the Lady Lions. I don't really want to reference them as the Lady Lions, but how just a women's version of the British Lions. And you can't get a better tour than the U.S. and Canada if you're on, in that regard, if they're going to do that. So, or vice versa. So and the Barbarians themselves and the World 15 that operates under that platform have just constituted the women's Barbarians as well. That if we're factoring all these things into double headers and in conjunction with other things, yeah, Aaron, I think that there's an appetite for outbound and inbound things that we're currently not thinking about. And these, I call these concepts, because there's concepts like touch rugby, and corporate touch rugby, and there's concept, there's a Warrior Cup. Think about a brand with the Polynesian teams against the U.S. every summer, and the merchandise and the things that go with that kind of stuff, and the NFL connectivities, and and the Can-Am could be a lot more robust, in men's and women's, and things like that.
I really want
MLR playing Pro 14, and things like, I mean, there's just a lot of that stuff that I think that once you start putting a concept calendar next to an actual calendar, that you're able to then start shifting into what would make sense. And I hope my hope is that American Rugby, USA Rugby, becomes a facilitator for a lot of this stuff, and then groups like ours that can do a few of those things, can collaborate with others that might do one of those things or more, and we're all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet and so forth. As one of my friends used to say, back a long time ago, if you're on the same hymn sheet, it doesn't mean that you've got a tune yet, right? But at least you're all saying the same thing, and ultimately over time with practice, you can get in tune together. So I think that's where we ultimately need to be.
Awesome. Again, love what you guys are doing. Love following, this AEG Rugby's journey and just everything. Thanks for, taking the time to talk with me about, this portion of your guys' strategy. Just keep doing what you're doing, because I love rugby, and especially events, that are only a short drive away from my house.
So, get your personal needs as well, right?
Yeah. So for everyone else, I am live tomorrow, continuing our team series with the Glendale Raptors. Head coach Dave Williams, former USA Eagle, USA 15s and 7s strength coach, USA 7s assistant, and pro rugby assistant for the single season of that defunct league. Great dude. We are live at the same time, 10 a.m. And Aaron Castro for Earful of Dirt signing off. Thanks, Dan.
Cheers.